Welcome in, everyone. Today we have our first episode of our Stealth to Wealth interviews. Here today we have a very special person to me, an author of 5 books, a TV personality, founder and CEO of the Rollover Company Incorporated, founder and CEO of Winfrey Wealth Management, a former pastor of over 10 years, an entrepreneur, philanthropist, husband, and my father, Charles Winfrey Jr. How you doing today?
We're good. Happy to be here for the very first episode for Stealth to Wealth. I guess this is the first of a podcast, so I'm excited.
Yep. All right, so we're going to hop in it today. So today our kind of focus is really going to be credit and financial literacy in younger audiences, mainly people going to college.
Okay.
So for people who don't know you, introduce yourself, give us a little background about yourself, where you came from, and what you do now.
Well, you gave the introduction, but Charles Winfrey Jr., born and raised Nashville, Tennessee, going in my 24th year as a financial advisor, but also as a fiduciary. And what that means is legally, I have to do what's in the best interest of my clients. We have been financial advisors, like I said, for over 24 years, but I started working as an intern through a program called Inroads, where I was able to, in high school, start interviewing for jobs. I ended up working for what is now called Regions Bank. And so for 4 years, every summer, while I was in college, I got to intern and got to meet. In fact, the future CEO of now Pinnacle Bank, he was actually my mentor. So it was a great experience. And so from after I graduated, they gave me an offer at the bank. It was too low. I was offended, didn't take it. And then I started working for a company called John Hancock, which allowed me to get all of my licenses, get training, worked there for 2 years. And then I quickly realized I didn't want to work for anybody. So after working at the bank, working at John Hancock, stepped out on faith, started a company, and here we are 24 years later.
So as you see, this man has a lot of experience. So take this information however you want to, but this is legit information. So to start off, I want to start on the conversation of credit. So Can you explain what credit is and why is it important?
Yeah, simply credit is just trust. The technical definition is I can buy some goods or I can buy a service and I don't have to make a payment.
Okay.
So whoever is lending me the money, because I'm a borrower, if they extend me credit, I can get something first without paying for it because they trust me to pay them back.
Okay.
And so what they'll do, for example, here in our business, we can order like these books. So I have all of my books printed, and they will print them before I pay for them. So that's credit. And I'll have what is called a net 30. So I have 30 days to pay back what I borrow in terms of the cost to print the book. And if I do not pay it back in 30 days, then they will add interest. So if it may cost me $300 to have 100 books printed. So if I pay the $300 before the 30 days, it's like same as cash. If I do not pay it back in 30 days, that $300 could increase to $325, $310. So credit is when you get something in advance and pay for it later. You can also do what is called have a credit card. And so what a credit card will do is like cash. You can take the credit card, purchase something, buy some services from someone, and then they'll give you 30 days to pay that money back. And again, if you do not pay it back within the 30 days, you'll have to owe what you borrowed and interest on top of that. And so if you want to have good credit, you have to learn to be someone who's trustworthy, and then also show that you've got a history of managing money well. And as you continue to do that, you'll get more and more credit.
So you said if you don't pay it back in time, you pay interest. On the news now we see interest rates are rising. Is that the interest, that number?
So that's a good question. So whenever we hear the Federal Reserve has raised interest rates, what they're talking about is the federal funds rate. So the federal funds rate is, so the federal, being the Federal Reserve, funds rate is actually what they charge banks when they borrow money from the U.S. Treasury. And so whenever the Fed raises the Fed funds rate, that means banks have to pay back interest on the money they borrow from the government at a higher rate. So this is how business works. If the bank who's loaning us money are being charged more by the people they're getting the money from, in turn, they're going to charge us more. So it has a connection or a correlation, but it's not the exact same thing. So it's a very good question, because what we want to make sure people who are listening to us is they're knowledgeable that when they hear the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates, that doesn't automatically mean your credit card interest rates going up, your mortgage interest rates are going up. It just means the banks who we get our money from, they're having to pay more back to the Federal Reserve or the U.S. Treasury, so in turn, they're going to charge us more.
So it's like a little supply chain. So it's like Federal Reserve up here, if it costs more for them, they're going to come down to the banks. And then if it costs more for the banks, it comes down to us. So it's
not going to cost the Federal Reserve, because Federal Reserve actually is the one that regulates all of this. So it's not costing them anything, but it's their responsibility to keep the economies of scale in order.
Okay.
So to make sure that, why did they raise interest rates? Because inflation was getting too high. So one of the powers that the Federal Reserve has is they can raise interest rates that will have an alternate impact, where if they raise interest rates, what they're trying to do is cool things off.
Okay.
They're trying to slow people down, because if I have to pay back more, I may not borrow as much. Because unfortunately, what we've had since the 80s, 90s, early 2000s is interest rates have been so low, people have been borrowing so much. Now the Federal Reserve is saying, hold on, things have gotten out of hand, let's kind of bring some things back. So yes, it's a supply chain, but also I want to make sure people understand it's how business works. Because remember what I said, the banks are having to pay back more.
Okay.
So in turn, they want to keep their profit the same, so they then charge us, the customers, more. So now when we go get a car loan, instead of it being at 4% last year, now it's 6%. So it hasn't cost the bank anymore. It's just to help them keep their profit margins the same. And so it's going to be interesting when inflation comes down, will banks lower those rates?
Well, they would have to, right?
Well, they don't technically have to, because they may feel you've been comfortable paying it at 6, let's keep it at 6, even though we could bring it down to 4.
And then they just make more money.
Because we want to have our profits even higher. So that's going to be something to watch. I'm not saying they're going to do that, but something to consider.
Okay, so the next question, we have a lot of high schoolers and rising college students.
Okay.
So what is the best way for a college student to begin building their credit?
All right, so first thing when it comes to building your credit is you have to realize the responsibility you have when it comes to credit. And so before I start giving you steps, I want to make sure you understand the responsibility when you have credit is kind of like your name. You want to protect your name at all costs, so you want to protect your credit at all costs. So first of all, take it serious. Those of you all who are about to go to college, let me give you a sneak preview. You're going to be bombarded once you hit campus with all kinds of credit card offers, okay? So if you have this opportunity, which having credit is an opportunity, I don't want you to squander or mess up that opportunity. So first of all, you have to realize, take it serious. It's a huge responsibility. So let's kind of go back. Ideally, when you are 13 years old, because you said we have high schoolers watching and listening as well, the first step when it comes to building credit is if you are not 18, because most credit card companies will not give you a credit card if you're not 18. So if you're 13 to 17, you want to ask your parents to make you an authorized user on their credit card.
So let's make that clear. You're saying you do not have to be 18. You can be as young as 13 to start building your credit.
That's
is what
correct.
you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay.
So you can start building your credit as an authorized user. So what's an authorized user? When you turn 13, I added you to all of the credit cards that we had that will allow it. Not every credit card company will do it at 13. Some wait until they're 16. So what it has done is, because we pay our credit cards on time and have good credit, it started to help build your score.
Okay.
Even though you were not of age to have a card, it at least starts a history.
Okay, so maybe someone who wants to get started with this now, let's say I'm a 13, 14-year-old and I want to start building my credit. I would go to my parents, tell them under any bank they use, is there certain banks that only allow the
Well, we're talking about
authorized-
credit card companies. So some banks do have their own credit cards,
Okay.
but then you have different credit card companies that are just standalone
They're separate from banks.
from banks.
Okay.
Okay. So yes, you do want to go to your parents, but what you also want to do, if they'll let you know, is make sure they have good credit.
Your parents?
Yes.
Okay.
Because if you're an authorized user on someone who's not paying their credit cards on time,
That's
or
gonna
has a
hurt
low
you.
credit score, it can hurt you instead of helping you.
Okay.
Okay, but we're going to assume your parents are doing the right thing. So so from 13 to 17, really all you can do to build credit is to be an authorized user on your parents' credit card. Now, we have some clients who the grandparents are doing it for the grandchildren.
Okay.
So don't get discouraged if your parents are like, no, I don't want to put you on. Well, you probably got a better chance asking your grandparents. They'll be like, oh, baby, I'll go ahead and do it. And they more than likely have
A better
real
credit.
good credit because they have had credit cards and accounts longer.
So grandparents or parents
Yes.
can list their grandchild or child as an authorized
user.
for
Some
their
credit card companies as early as 13, most
Okay.
of them when you reach 16.
That's good. That's good. So I looked at this stat. It said, according to the Federal Reserve Bank in New York, the U.S. credit card balance rose from $61 billion to $990 billion in 2022, which marked an all-time high.
Yeah.
So we see debt and credit is rising and rising. So what are some do's and don'ts to building or tearing your credit?
All right, so let me finish the first part of what you asked me when you said, how can you start to build credit? So for those 13 to 17, become an authorized user. When you become 18, and it's really not right, but it's the system. Okay, so remember what I told you. When you step foot on Morehouse's campus, we're going to give a plug to Morehouse, you're going to be bombarded with credit card offers, right? But 9 times out of 10, you won't have a job.
Okay. So there's no way to pay them back?
Well, see, that's the thing. If you understand the responsibility of a credit card, and now that you've watched this and you know, I've got to take this serious, if you're going to apply for a credit card, you need to already know how you're going to plan to pay back the money that you use.
Okay.
So let me be transparent and give you all my story. So when I went to college, before I went, my mother said, do not get a credit card. Like, she was adamant, do not get a credit card. Well, that worked for about the first week, maybe first month. But, they kept throwing out all of these offers. I'm like, oh, I can handle it. So I could actually get 3 credit cards.
Wow.
And I started using one, but I didn't connect the dots. When the statements came in that I had to pay back this money, I literally just threw the statements away. Like, I don't have any money, so, what can I do? And before I know it, I get this letter that's not a bill, but it's a letter from the credit card company that says, hey, we're charging off your account.
Oh, wow.
And we're sending it to collections. And so that's why I say have the responsibility, because what ended up happening is, and let me tell you, it was such a small amount. Like, I think one of the credit cards, this one in particular, only had a $500 balance. And I think I only used $300. But that $300 followed me for like 6 years.
Wow. So when you said they just charged off your account, for example, if someone were to just throw it away or act like they don't see it, the credit card company will just charge it off your account automatically?
No, they will send it to collections.
What's collections?
So collections is when they hire another company to find you and force you to pay off the bill.
Okay.
But this is the thing. Even though in my mind I thought, I don't have to pay this. When you apply for the credit card, you have to put down your social security number, your date of birth, so they know who you are. They can find you.
Yeah.
Okay, now, the credit card rules have changed since then. Like, that was over 30 years ago. But I still want you to understand, if you're not responsible or don't really have a plan on how to do the credit, don't start yet.
Okay.
Your next option would be wait until you start working, whether it's after school, high school, college, you go into the military, whatever you're going to do. But you need to be in a position where you can pay back the credit, because this is why. Whenever you have a credit card, you want to stay under 30% of the limit.
So, just to put that in context, for a credit card that has $1,000 limit,
yes,
you don't want to spend more than $300?
No. So
Okay.
that is what is called utilization. So you want to always only utilize 30% of your accessible credit.
Okay, well, what if you can't afford to pay back that 30%? Will we alter the number down? Like, let's say you can only pay back $200. Would you say don't use more than 20%? Or is that number
Right.
it alters?
Yeah, so
Okay.
you set that individually.
Okay.
But, so this is the thing about credit. If you try to think about credit in a logical way, that's not how it works. Okay? Let me tell you what I mean. Many people assume if I have no debt, which is what credit is, it's I'm borrowing money, and if I don't pay it all back, it's a debt. But many people think if I have no debt, I'll have a higher credit score.
Okay.
But in reality is, if you have debt, but you manage the debt well and you know the rules of credit, having debt actually helps you have a higher score.
So I've seen for what people don't know, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, the author of many financial books, he says, I am a million billionaire in debt. And people, there's such a negative correlation with debt as like, you don't want debt. So can you explain why having debt actually may be beneficial?
Yeah, because actually one of the first tools in building wealth is using debt, but instead of thinking of it like debt, think of it as what it really is, and that's leverage.
Leverage on who? The banks?
Or leverage on the money that you're receiving, and then how you can go about using that money that you've received. For example, when Kiyosaki talks about he has all of this debt, what does Kiyosaki really invest in? What's the main thing? What's the asset?
Real estate?
He invests in real estate, okay? If you try to go out right now, buy a home, let's just use Nashville, Tennessee, average home may be $350,000 to $450,000.
Okay.
Most people do not have $350,000 or $450,000 just sitting around and say, "Oh, I'm going to go buy a house."
Okay.
And pay cash.
Okay.
So when we mean leverage, we mean you get a mortgage, which is a form of credit because it's debt, and a bank or mortgage company says, "Oh, you want to buy that home? Okay. First, do you have a job? And if so, how much do you bring in? And then second, what's your credit score?" Because we want to know, number one, can you afford whatever debt we're about to give you? But we also want to know what's your history in paying back your debt.
Okay.
And so we can't skip over talking about credit scores.
That's the next question.
Okay? Because the higher your credit score, watch this, the more debt you will be offered, because your credit score is kind of when I told you credit is like trust, the higher your credit score, they can say, "Oh, we can trust you."
So you're kind of saying, like, the higher your credit score, the banks realize that's more debt we can put on you, but you can handle it in a way?
You can handle it because they're not just giving it to you because you have a high score. What was the
Right.
other thing they have to see? How much income do you have coming in? And they need
Right.
to know you can pay it back. So that's why I said credit scores are not just this logical formula. There are a lot of things. So one thing I told you is keep it under 30%, right? The other thing you want to do, your utilization of your credit. The other thing you want to do is, if you can, pay as much of your debt as you can every 30 days. Okay.
So almost like a bill.
Yes,
Treat
it
it
is
like
a
a
bill.
bill.
It is
Okay.
a bill. You will get a bill every month, but normally on the bill they'll ask for a minimum payment. And so let's go back. We say we have a $1,000 limit. We're going to use only $300. Let's say your balance is $200. On a $200 credit card balance with a $1,000 limit, your minimum payment might be $15.
Okay. So it's a $215 payment?
No, $15 to pay down the $200, which is your balance.
Okay.
But what's the problem with that? If you only did minimum payments, it would take you 7-8 months to pay off this $200, but you have the cash where you could literally maybe pay off the $200 right now.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're saying every month you have to pay at least $15, even if you can't pay the $200?
Right. There's always going to be a minimum payment,
Okay.
but this is kind of the trap of the minimum payment. The trap of the minimum payment is the longer it takes you to pay off the balance, there's an interest rate that's attached to the credit card. And every time you have a balance, when your statement is generated every month, but your balance is not zero, you're paying back interest. And so when I say the minimum payment trap, the bank wants you to take forever paying it back
That's more money they get.
because that's more interest
From
that
the
they're going to
interest.
benefit from.
Wow. Okay.
So you always want to do more than a minimum payment. But then this is kind of the tricky part with the credit score and credit. If you're under 30% of your utilization on your card, you don't have to be in a rush to pay off that 30%.
So if I had back to the example, if I had $1,000 credit limit and I only utilized $300, if I pay back the $300, I don't have to be in a rush to pay off the rest?
Yes, so this is what I mean by that. When you're starting to build your credit, which is what we're talking about here, what you do not have is time on your side. Your accounts have not been open that long.
Right.
So part of what helps a high credit score is how long someone's had an account.
Why is that?
Because you have shown that you've been trustworthy for not just a year, but 5 years,
long
and
period.
10 years, and 20
Okay.
years, okay?
Okay.
But watch this. They also need to see so many months of you paying your card consistently.
Off in full, not just minimum payments, right?
Or both.
Or so even.
So that's why I say it's tricky, because the first thing so this is where most people get in trouble with credit. If they've got a $1,000 card that has a limit of $1,000, their balance is $999. That's the biggest problem. They're using all of the leverage, all of the debt.
Okay.
If you stay under 30%, you could kind of have this balance floating. Now, do I want you to float it because you're paying back interest? No, I don't want you to float it. But at the same time, so one strategy you could do is you could borrow or use your credit card every month up to $150 and then pay it off every month when you get your statement. And if you do that for a whole year, you've paid your card on time for 12 months and you've stayed under 30%.
Okay, so I want to do this. So let's say back to the 1,000 card limit. Let's say I do spend $999, but I do pay it off in full every month.
Okay.
Would it benefit me not to stay under that 30% threshold and have that money floating around, or would it affect or not affect my credit score the same?
So good question. If you're going up to the limit every month, the credit card company is saying, hold on, something's not right. Okay. That yes, even though you pay it off, why are you going all the way to the limit? Okay, so let me give you a statement that everybody needs to remember. The bank will always give you more than you need.
What do you mean by that?
You got to remember this, okay? When you apply for a credit card, you are applying for it because you're trying to build your credit history. You weren't applying for it because you want to go out here and you want to splurge and you want to look like, you've got it going on. That's not what you were doing it for. You heard us in this podcast, on this interview, and you're like, I need to build my credit. I want to be responsible, okay?
Okay.
You really have nothing that you really need right now. You may have some things you want, but you have nothing you really need. So why would they give you a $1,000 limit?
To tempt you to use it?
There you go.
So they can
charge you more interest.
So credit card companies want to target specifically younger adults?
I mean, just think about it.
Because we're more vulnerable to spending?
Think about it. You have no job, you have no experience, you have no history. I mean, it's giving a child a jar full of candy with no limits. Okay, and what do we know that would not end well?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me go back to read the statistic you read from the Federal Reserve of New York.
U.S. credit card balances rose from $61 billion to $990 billion in 2022.
So this is why I said being responsible about credit. What you just read, what I hear from that as a financial advisor is that people are struggling to make it from day to day, month to month, and it's for a number of reasons. They maybe do not have enough income coming in. Maybe it's healthcare costs. Maybe it's some helping other family members. Whatever it is, but they're having to use credit to fill in the gap.
They're having to use credit for their needs.
Basic living expenses, right? So you went from 61 billion to how much?
990.
So
that's pretty hard to do.
So this is, and it's not, and it's really not surprising to me. But this is why I said the responsibility of credit and understanding it is so important. A lot of those who are watching, your parents would probably not even want you to watch this. And let me tell you why. Because it's the same reason why my mother said, do not get a credit card.
Because they fell for the same trap?
They know that if you get into this trap, it's really hard for you to get out. But I'm glad we're doing this conversation because what you have to understand, though, are many people, millionaires, multimillionaires, decamillionaires, billionaires, many of them built their wealth through the power of credit. And so if we only have this negative opinion and connotation about debt, we'll be afraid.
We'll stay in this cycle.
And that's exactly what I believe those who do not want us to have, that's how they want us to be.
Okay, so let's say for a college student going into college or a high school, we're going to stay with college. For a college student going into college, you are going to be bombarded with credit cards left and right as soon as you step on campus.
Yes.
Let's put it in 3 steps. What 3 steps would you do to take advantage? Not even take advantage, but what is the right way to handle all of these cards?
Really stick with one, okay? You don't need 3 or 4 because if you have 3 or 4, that's going to give you the opportunity to spend more than you need to spend, okay? So stick with one. Stay under 30% of the limit as your balance at all times, and then pay as much of that balance off every month. Those will be the 3 things. Stick with one card, stay under 30%, pay off the balance.
All right, perfect. So that's the blueprint for all you up-and-coming college students. So before, when we were talking about what credit does if you don't pay it back, it affects your credit score.
Yes.
So for the people who don't know, what is a credit score?
Okay.
And where is a place that someone can check theirs?
Yeah, so a credit score is really how they measure your credit worthiness. Okay.
What's credit worthiness?
Your credit worthiness is how long have you had credit, how much credit have you had, and how did you manage it while you've had it. Okay.
Okay.
So real simple. Lower credit score, lower management of your debt. You were not good with the credit.
Meaning you failed to pay off payments in full?
It's not just you didn't pay off payments in full, but you were late. Okay? So every 30 days, you'll get this statement, right?
Mm-hmm.
But let's say you are slow to pay your payments. So that's something we have to talk about. When you get your bill, it's going to have a due date. And the due date is when the credit card company wants to receive their payment back on this date.
Okay.
So if the due date is August the 15th, but you do not pay back until September 15th, that goes on your credit score as a late payment.
Is there a system that breaks down, if I'm this late on a payment, this will affect my credit score by this many points?
I'm not sure, but just to be on the safe side, just don't be late.
Okay.
Don't be late. You know, that's why realistically credit card companies do have minimums, because there's sometimes that's all people can pay.
And
So
that's why we want to stay under that 30%.
We want to stay under that 30%
threshold so we can pay it off.
Because you're not going to be. So let's go back to what we were saying. Why do you not want to have $1,000 limit and you're all the way to $999? First of all, your minimum payment would be higher if your balance was $999 versus $299. So you don't want to be so stretched, so thin that every month you're having to pay. So this is what you got to remember. If your minimum payment is only $15, right? But your balance is $999. If you only pay $15,
It's going to take a long time to pay it off.
First of all, not all of the 15 is going to the balance. A lot of it is just interest that you're paying back to the bank. So that's how people get into the trap, because if they're only doing the minimum payment, but watch this, and they do not have enough money, because the statistics you just read tells us that people are using this to live from month to month.
Using more than they have.
How in the world would they ever be able to pay it off? And before you know it, that $999 becomes $1,030, $1,100, and you only have a $1,000 limit.
And your credit score is only
And it just
suffering
continues
from
to go down, go down, go down.
And with a bad credit score, that only limits your opportunities in other
In the
things,
future.
such as houses,
So, okay,
business credit.
So watch this. So let me go back to my story. So this is my freshman year. This is 1995. If at that time, if a debt goes into collection, it takes 7 years for it to come off your credit report.
So if you have a payment that goes to collection, it takes 7 years for it to get off your credit.
At that time. Now the rules have changed a little bit, so
Okay.
people are not kind of penalized like that. But my point is, you may think, oh, I'm not paying on time. Oh, made some slow payments. It's not going to really impact me. No, it follows you. Okay. And so if you're not ready to handle that responsibility, you just don't do it.
Just stay away from it.
Just don't do it.
All right. So where's a place someone can check their credit score?
There are a number of websites. Every year, everybody has the opportunity to get a free credit report. So just do a Google search of free credit reports. But the key with your credit report is you want one from all 3 bureaus. Okay? So you don't want just one that has Experian, or one that just has Equifax, or one that just has TransUnion. You want a 3, it's called a merged credit report that has all 3 bureaus, and this is why. Some credit bureaus report some things. Other credit bureaus report other things. So if you're only looking at an Equifax credit report, it may look like, oh, everything's in order. But your TransUnion may say, oh no, you had an account over here you forgot to pay for. So having a merged credit report with all 3 bureaus are important.
Okay.
You need to know credit scores. They can be as low as 300 and as high as 850.
What is a good credit score?
Yeah, so when I worked at the bank, a good credit score was somebody who had a minimum of a 680 and higher. Okay. Some institutions will tell you if you've got a 720 or a 750, you're good.
So if, for example, let's say I did have a 720 or 750, what other opportunities would that open up for me to venture out into?
Yeah, great. So the higher your credit score, the better offers you receive when it comes to interest rates, when it comes to limits on your cards, when it comes to your terms. Because when we talk about credit, we're not just talking about credit cards. We're even talking about mortgages on homes or automobile loans on vehicles. And so if you compare someone who has a 600 credit score, who may get a car loan at an 8% interest rate, but someone who has a 720 credit score, they may have an interest rate at 4%. And so that's important.
Why would the bank give someone who has a better history of paying off their credit a lower interest rate where they could take advantage of someone who has a higher interest rate? Like you said, someone who has a 500 credit score, they'll charge them an 8% interest rate versus someone with a 700 charge a 4%. Why would the banks do that?
It's about credit worthiness. It's about trust. It's about your history. So this is what you have to remember. The lower your credit score, you're viewed as a higher risk.
To the banks.
To the banks, the lending institution, because you have shown in the past, they can't trust you when they give you credit. You don't pay on time, you don't pay it off, you're slow to pay. And so if you are a higher risk to the institution, higher risk customers get higher interest rates. Okay. Because for them, the bank is viewing it as there's a good chance we might not get our money back. So while you're paying us, the interest we're receiving needs to be higher because there's a very good chance we may not get this entire debt paid. So at least while you're paying, we're making more money than we might make at the very end. So it's just a business decision.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
It's a business decision.
So I want to switch the conversation. Okay. I want to go back to college students. For all my college students, what are the top 3 credit cards that you would recommend for college students to apply for?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I'm really recommending that they apply. So let me tell you the ones to stay away from. Let's look at it that way. Because you're going to get a lot of offers.
The top credit cards to stay away from for college students.
Stay away from for college students. Number 1 is going to be a Discover card. Okay, that's going to be one you're probably going to be offered. The reason I encourage you to stay away from Discover, their interest rates are typically higher. Okay, so if you are considering building your credit, you're in college, you understand the responsibility, you're not going to use more than 30%, and you're going to try to find this one card, what I would say you do is compare the offers that you've received, because what'll happen when you get this credit card offer is the application is typically 1 page, right? They just need your signature, date of birth, and social security number. But then when you get your card, it's going to come with a booklet that's about 100 pages, but the print is so small, and it's basically telling you everything that if you do not do what you're supposed to do, we've got a right to come back and take our stuff back.
And then you can't do anything about it because they said they told you.
Because it's a contract, all right? But in that paperwork, it'll also tell you what your interest rate is. So what I would want you to do is to compare, if you're going to pick one card, find the one that has the lowest interest rate.
Okay.
And if Discover is in that mix, it's probably going to be one of the higher interest rates. So that'll be the one first one I'll say stay away from. The second type of card you want to stay away from is department store cards.
Such as Sam's Clubs, those type of things?
Any type of Macy's, Nordstrom's, Walmart, mostly every business where you buy something from, they now have their own credit card.
Why do you want to stay away from department stores' credit cards?
Because typically their interest rates are going to be higher. And watch this. If you get a Visa or a MasterCard or American Express, they're accepted at the department store. If you get a department store card, you can only use it typically at the department store.
But don't you receive special benefits points if you do have a department? Like, let's say I had a Macy's card. If I use so many points, don't I get points back?
Yes, but then that's why as you're building your credit history, you're going to figure out, based on what you like to do, there may be a card that's a Visa, a MasterCard, or an American Express where I get more benefits. Like my preferred card is my American Express Platinum. Okay, that's my business card. But because I like to travel, it's one of the best cards for accumulating points and also for my business expenses. And so if I'm not really into Macy's, having a Macy's card with those points might not be as advantageous for me as another card. But that's going to come with time, okay? Because that is, if you're not careful, how they'll try to bait you based on these points and all of these things you can get. But again, the bank will always give you more than what you need.
So I've heard on YouTube multiple times, can't you travel for free with credit cards?
Yeah, I do it all the time.
Can you explain how you can travel for free with credit cards?
Well, it's, you still have to understand, if you're offered rewards from a credit card company, the way that you get rewards is by using the credit card. And the more you use it, the more rewards you build, okay? But let me give you all a hack. Let me give you just straight hack. To really maximize rewards and points, so this is what we're assuming. We're assuming you are taking responsibility, you know how to leverage credit and master credit, you've got a good credit score. Ideally, how you do it is pay all of your monthly expenses with the credit card. Okay? That's your light bill, your water bill, that's your mortgage if they'll take it, your car note, and then the income you have from your job or your business, you pay the credit card off every month. But instead of you only getting credit for a few things you buy with your credit card, you put everything on the credit card.
All right. That was really good. Hold on, we got to break that down. We got to break that down. So you're saying with the credit card, you can use a credit card to pay off all of your needs.
Pay for
your needs
every month.
And then with your job income,
yes,
you pay that off with your needs.
Because you were going to do it anyway. So whether you put it on the credit card or not, you were going to have to pay your water bill.
Credit card hacking.
You were going to have to pay your phone bill. You were going to have to pay your light bill. And so for those of us who really know how to leverage credit, if I was already spending $3,000 a month for my expenses, I just put $3,000 every month on my credit card and then have my income pay it off every month. So what have I done? I have built a good credit history because every month I'm paying my card on time. I'm paying it off, but I'm also building up these rewards and these points.
So once I use my credit card for my needs, pay it off with my job income, is there some type of benefit I get from that? Is that where the rewards come in?
Yeah, because again, rewards typically on a credit card are built based on your balance and you paying it off. So in my example I just gave, I'm spending $3,000 on my credit card every month, but I'm paying it off. So at the end of the year, I've got $36,000 that I've paid off that can equate to 20,000 points, 30,000 points, or 15,000 points.
Which can equal free vacations.
A lot
whatever
of things.
it is.
Yeah, a lot of things. So what you'll do, but this is the second reason why that strategy is good. And most people don't know this, so you got to remember it. If I use my debit card, right?
Just for everybody that doesn't know, a debit card is the money that you actually have.
Yeah, so a debit card is when you have a checking account at a bank, and instead of you writing a check or having to use cash all the time, they give you a debit card.
For any teenager that has a card, it's more than likely a debit card.
It's more than likely a debit card, right? So, but if you use a debit card, but there's a transaction on your debit card that is not right, okay? So let's say restaurant charged you twice for a meal that you had, or let's say your debit card gets lost or stolen and somebody uses it. With a debit card, a bank will take forever investigating and giving you your money back.
Okay.
But a credit card company, all you have to do is tell them, typically immediately they'll put it back.
Mm-hmm.
So you have more protection with a credit card than you will ever have with a debit card. So putting everything on a credit card is not a bad idea because you have more protection against fraud, protection against if your card gets stolen or lost. Because reality is debit cards are only, when I first started working with the bank in 95, that's about when we started seeing debit cards. So they're only...
Oh, they're not that old.
They're not that old. Credit goes all the way back to even biblical times.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that's the game. And so going back to how you can pay for trips with a card. So what will happen, and there are a lot of people online that'll give you all of these tips, but what you can do is you can link your credit card to the airline that you travel with the most. And so your credit card points can turn into points with that airline. And so let's say you fly Southwest and you're a Rapid Rewards member. Now Southwest has their own credit card, so that's a whole different conversation. But let's just say.
But doesn't that go back to the point? Would you consider that one of those department things
Yeah,
that you stay away from?
Exactly. But so many of us just have a card that we use for travel. So if I'm a consistent Delta traveler, Delta has a card with American Express that does give you additional benefits and points.
So you don't have to have the credit card of that specific airline that you want to fly on. There are some main bank companies that will correlate your spending into miles. Right?
Yeah, that's why if you really are serious about, I want to leverage credit, master credit, you need to research and study, okay? And there are a lot of tools and resources out here. But see, we've just had a conversation about more pleasure and how you can travel, you can buy things for free. But let's not leave out the biggest tool of credit is building wealth.
That's the next question.
Okay, so that's the component, because really the perks of the rewards and all of that, that's a byproduct of you've been good with credit all of these years.
Yeah.
But what that also should mean is that before now, you leveraged credit. So let me give you all another hack. Okay, so this is for our college students. These are for those who, let's say you're about to graduate. So the reason why building credit while you're in college or becoming an authorized user on a parent or grandparent's card is so important is because when you graduate and you start working into a job where you have consistent income, what we want you to do is before you buy a home that you think is going to be your dream home or this first home that you're so excited about, I would want you to use the FHA loan that allows you to buy investment property. So you could literally buy a triplex.
Which means 3 different housing units in one property.
Right. You live in one, and then you lease and rent out the other 2. And with an FHA loan, typically you only have to put down 3%. With a conventional loan, you typically have to put down 10 or even 20%. So now you put down less money.
Do you have to do both? Or is it either or? Like, would it be 13% or would it just be 3%?
No, it'll just be 3.
Okay. So this is a hack right here. Housing hack. If there is $100,000 triplex, meaning there's 3 different units that people can live in, you can live in one, rent out the others with people paying you cash flow for that property.
And you only put down $3,000.
And you only put down $3,000.
Now let's be realistic. $100,000 triplex in 2023, very hard to find. but the principle is. Now, this is another thing to know about FHA. FHA, you really do not have to have the highest of highest credit score. Okay, that's one of the benefits to an FHA program. I don't have to put down as much, and I don't have to have the highest credit score. But what did we say earlier? The better your credit score, the better your rates, all of those things. So you want to strive
for a better credit score.
For a better credit score.
Okay.
But when I worked at the bank, banks typically do conventional loans.
What is a conventional loan?
Conventional loan is you are going the conventional route. You're not going the FHA route. Okay. The FHA program stands for Federal Housing Administration, and it was really created because not everyone had great credit, not everyone had down payments. So to help everybody participate in wealth building, which normally starts with buying real estate or a home, the FHA program was created.
Now, to be specifically clear, you can only use the FHA loan once, right?
Well, technically, but there are different FHA programs.
Okay.
So some programs can only be used one time. Others can be used, you got to get creative with how you do it. But we're assuming, yes, you're using your one-time FHA opportunity, and that will come normally with your first purchase.
So if someone wanted to do a real estate play, would you recommend the FHA loan or the conventional loan?
FHA first, all day long.
Why? Because only the interest rates are cheaper?
Lower. No, normally your interest rate is going to be higher because conventional loans, think of it, the conventional method, your rates will be lower, but your down payment will be higher. Okay, so there's always going to be a trade-off.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
What did we say earlier? Why would a bank charge you more interest if I've got a 500 credit score and you got a 700? Because you're a higher risk to them. Okay. FHA, lower down payment, typically going to be a higher interest rate. It's going to be a trade-off. Conventional, I put down more, so my rate is lower. Okay, and some call it I buy down my rate. Okay. But conventional loans would normally give you 80% of the loan to value. Okay, so of that $100,000 property you were talking about, you would have to put down $20,000, and then they would finance the additional $80,000. Okay, so that's 80% of the loan to value. The value is $100,000. 80% of that would be $80,000. So you put down $20,000, they'll finance the $80,000.
But you still have to pay back that $80,000 over
That's
time.
correct. That's correct.
But if it's a triplex, that cash flow coming in would probably...
The goal would be, so this is the hack with the FHA play. I put down 3%. I borrowed $100,000. I now have the leverage of these 3 properties. And then I fill the other 2 parts of my triplex, because I live in one, with tenants who will pay the mortgage for me. And I'm basically living mortgage free. And normally on the FHA, you're going to have a requirement that you have to stay in that property at least 2 years. And then you could move out, put someone else in the part that you lived in, and then go a conventional loan route, and then do the play all over again.
And keep building over and over. Just keep sizing up with your properties.
Keep doing it.
Makes sense.
And the other thing we'll add to it, if you're in a serious relationship, okay, you're with somebody, you're like, yeah, I think we're going to make this, long term. You all both can do the FHA play before you get married. Because what some people would do, this is what your mother and I did when we bought our first home. We did the FHA play together on one property. If we had to do it over again, we should have both leveraged the FHA loan. Then live in it 2 years. We married, but we stay on this house one night, stay in another house another night, do that for 2 years. But we would have 6 properties, and then we could turn around and, later buy the home or keep doing the play over and over.
So when you said use 2 different FHA loans, all you mean is just having 2 different properties that you use the FHA loan on, correct?
No, 2 different people.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. So each person, and we use the example of a triplex. You can use it on a quadplex, a 4-unit. You can use it on an apartment building where it may have 10 or 12 units.
Obviously, that would be more, but
it'll be more down payment, but it also going to be mean more cash flow.
Yeah.
Now, we would have to do an entirely a different video just talking about analyzing deals, because just because we say a triplex, duplex, a quad, it doesn't mean it'll make sense. Okay, but what I want to make sure you all do is understand the power of credit, and if you use it wisely, yes, it can help you pay for trips. Yes, it can give you all of these other perks. But the first thing we want you to do is learn how to use it to build wealth.
Okay.
So yeah.
And to come to an end here, when you say build wealth with credit, I know there's something called business credit. How can what is business credit, and how can someone leverage it to build that wealth?
Yeah, very good question. So business credit is similar to personal credit. Personal credit, as we said earlier, is dictated by your Social Security number. But business credit is dictated by your EIN number, employer identification number. So if we have future entrepreneurs that are watching us, current entrepreneurs, and instead of having to put everything in their name, if you are good with personal credit, it will lead to you being good with business credit. Because you can have a business that's earning all types of money, but if it has not been around that long and has no credit, you're going to have to personally guarantee that debt early on. And what personally guarantee means, if the business doesn't pay it, you have to pay it.
You have to pay it.
Okay. Yeah. And so business credit over time allows you to let my business now be responsible for the debt instead of me personally.
Okay.
And then when you start talking about business credit, you start talking about a lot more opportunities.
Yeah.
You know, the ability to, finance equipment, the ability to get lines of credit to help you with cash flow, help you with hiring, help you with expanding. Business credit allows you to buy a building, where you can have the housing of your operations and do the same thing. You can have tenants even with your business. So this is a very important topic, because at some point in your life, you're going to be using credit. But you got to always think about, am I being used, or am I using the credit to my advantage? I think a lot of people are being used. And so knowing these tools, and this is not the end all be all, this is a good start, but the key thing I want everybody to remember is the responsibility that comes with it. Do not be afraid, but do not take it lightly. Okay? Do not play when it comes to credit.
So if you could leave the viewers with any piece of advice to financially be free and really broadly just be successful, what would you leave them with?
I like to use acronyms because they're real easy to remember. So I want to use an acronym called MATCH, M-A-T-C-H. So the M, I would say find a good mentor and find a good mate. Okay, a mentor will get you to your goal faster, because they'll be able to show you the mistakes they made so you don't have to make those same mistakes. And a good mate, we just talked about it. Hey, you doing it on your own is great, but having a partner that can help you, you'll do a lot more. The A, I would say, have the right attitude. And when I mean the right attitude, be grateful that you're able to be in a country, you're able to do the things that you're able to do and don't have to worry about, how is this going to impact me? But also have an attitude of expectancy. Like, you know you're going to be successful, okay? The T, I would say think big and think often. So you've heard us talk today about triplexes and, duplexes. Think bigger than that, think big, but when I say think often, you and I had this conversation yesterday. One of the hardest things is for people to do is to think. We are now in a place where everybody wants it done for them. So I would say think big and think often. When it comes to the C, be creative. Okay, this right here what we're doing 10 years ago, nobody even thought about doing it, okay? But now it's kind of the norm. So I would say don't think about how you're able to earn income by your labor. Think about how you can earn income through your creativity.
Yeah.
Because that's something that will never run out.
Yeah,
okay?
that's good.
And not just creativity, but the second thing I'll say with the C is build content, okay? Everybody has phones, and that's what we're using around here. You can create content. You know something that somebody else does not know that you could share, and who knows what it'll do.
You do something every day that if you would just turn the camera on, you would be surprised at.
Yeah,
how many
I
people
could
would
help
listen.
you, and it could even, provide revenue for you. And then the last one, H, I would say, ask for help. A lot of people are afraid to ask for help. They want to feel like they know everything. And arguably the wisest man to ever live was Solomon. And the Lord asked him, what do you want? I can give you anything. And he asked for wisdom. And he said, how can I lead your people? I'm young. I don't know what to do. And the Lord said, because you didn't ask for money and position and power, you're going to get wisdom and all of these other things. And then the other H would be just stay humble. When you get wisdom, you understand you don't know as much as you think you do. Especially when you're young, you think you know it all. No, just stay humble. And then so when you put all the letters together, match. I believe when you do these things, you'll be matched with the right people, the right opportunities, and things will fall in place.
So if people want to follow up with you, see more of this content, where can they find you?
Yeah, Charles Winfrey on IG. We got the books here. You can go on Google and get all of those things. But
Here are 4 of the books here. Do yourself a favor, invest in yourself. Get one of these. Where can they buy the book? On Amazon?
And go to Amazon. Yep. And get it there. And just follow us on IG. Also on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube.
In the description below, I'll leave the link to all of these books on Amazon and the link to his Instagram. But Dad, thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for this episode, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.